here. Welcome to another Pawn News update. We have a lot to cover today, so we're going to move right into it. We're going to move quick, and we're going to be kind of combining everything into one story here because normally we divide it up. We talk about behind the scenes, we talk about what happened, and we talk about where we're going in the coming week, but not today. It's all jumbled up because last week on Frog Wrestling was Free Per View number 3, and it was a huge, huge event, and a lot went down, a lot has changed. And as it is, I already like to use free per views as a good opportunity to freshen things up. Maybe change how people look, maybe change factions, maybe change some music or some entrances. And I'm not kidding when I tell you that I have changed something about almost every single wrestler on the roster. Now, some of it is big, some of it is small, some of it might just be a little tweak to their music or the video that plays when they come out, but every single wrestler on the roster has had something changed about them. It's been a lot of work, and this coming week at Frog Wrestling is truly the beginning of a new era as a result. But we're going to get into all of that as we cover what went down at Free Per View 3 as we look into this week in Frog Wrestling. So getting right into it, the first match we had on the Free Per View was the TMS Tag Team Championship match. That was between Tanner Goodman, Brian Ibbett forming a new team going up against the French Confection of Randy Jordan and Patrick Beja. They were the champions, and in that match, they lost. It was the first title change of the night, an omen of perhaps a lot of things to come. And it was a phenomenal match. I really liked it. And so the first big announcement that I want to make on the back of this is I think this is the way we do tag team matches going forward. Definitely get in the comments. Let me know what you thought about it, but I thought it felt big and epic. And while the match was still long, it wasn't as bad as some of the longer tag team matches we've had. And I do think we could shorten it further by making non-elimination versions of it. So if we want to do a bunch of tag team matches in one night, but we're worried because they're going to go crazy long, I think we just remove the elimination component, but we keep the knockout component of it. And I think it'll make those matches quick and maybe even a little too quick in some cases, but I think they'll still be good. So that's where my head is at. It certainly gets me more excited about doing more tag team matches, which I do love. I just don't love how the game handles them. So let me know your thoughts, but right now I think the plan is to kind of go full speed ahead on tag matches again and use this as the format for them going forward. After that, we had our Women's Money in the Bank Battle Royale, and I think this also worked out really well. Ladder matches have just not been that impressive to me, and I think Battle Royales are fun. Now, I say that as somebody who has to tell himself week to week not to do a Royal Rumble literally every week. I love the Royal Rumble. It's one of my favorite WWE events. I would put a Royal Rumble on every week in Frog Wrestling if I didn't have common sense tell me that too much of a good thing is maybe a bad thing. But I thought Battle Royales for this worked a lot better. All the participants were Fast Grandma, Gwen Gunn, Big Bag Kristen, Nicole Spagnuolo, Monica Stone, and Carter Johnson were our 6 combatants in that one. And Big Bag Kristen won. Maybe not a surprise victory. Certainly would have a lot of money and support behind her. You know, money by points, I mean. So I think Kristen was definitely a favorite to win, and she won. It's the beginning of maybe a redemption story for her. You know, she was sort of that undefeated champion, very similar to like what we saw with Scott. And when she lost, she just kept losing. And maybe now it's time for Kristen to make her presence known. She's got the Money in the Bank briefcase. She can certainly pick her moment to strike. But this does also mark the first loss for the Mod Syndicate of the night, which would go on to be a bit of a theme and have some implications that we're going to get into. The next match we had was the Dragon Beef Championship match. Speaking of disappointing Mod Syndicate matches, Ben Bumhofer has been Tom Merritt's protege. He's been guiding him, shaping him, getting a more brutal version of Ben. But there was nothing brutal about Ben except the beatdown that he received at the hands of Kyle Ferguson in what was our second title change of the night, as Kyle has reclaimed the Dragon Beef Championship after defeating him in a squash match. And for those that don't know the wrestling term, a squash match is when the match is just one-sided. A person literally squashed in the combat. And I feel like that's definitely what we saw here. That's okay. I think those things make for more interesting stories. Kyle and Garrett have certainly been struggling to recapture tag team glory. So seeing Kyle just go in and go after this title with such ferocity was really good. And seeing Ben take another loss and a second loss for the Mod Syndicate, really heartbreaking for that team. So that then brings us to the Women's Championship match. This was the Iron Man match. Now, one thing I do think I'm going to do going forward, the 15-minute time limit I think works really well on a standard show. For a free preview, I do think I'm going to increase it if I do an Iron Man match to 20 minutes. A lot of matches go that long anyway. You know, the whole idea of an Iron Man match being that it's a longer match. But if you go and you look at the timestamps for matches, a lot of them tend to go 15, 20 minutes anyway. So it's really not that big of a deal when a match goes that long. And I think extending it out to 20 might have saved this match. This was definitely the weakest match of the night. It just got to a point where it was very clear that Jocelyn was not going to win. And we were all just sort of waiting for a timer to count down to confirm what we already knew. I do think with a little more time, maybe something interesting could have come out of it. Not that that's the solution to everything. It could have also allowed for the lead that Kim had to just get bigger. But I do think that there's a more epic feel if it goes a little longer. And so my thought on it, at least, is to have Iron Man matches when it's part of the free preview go a little longer. But yes, Kim did defeat Jocelyn. She is our new Frog Pants Women's Champion. And sad day for Jocelyn. She had a couple of great title defenses. I still think she is a very strong contender. We're going to have to see how she bounces back from this, but I thought she did very well. That brings us to the men's Money in the Bank Battle Royale. The participants on this were Patrick Beja coming in despite having already wrestled in the tag team match. He showed up. Dan Patrice, Brian Dunaway, Tom Merritt, Mark Spagnolo, and Garrett Weinzierl for your 6 contenders there. The winner ended up being Tom Merritt, and finally a victory for the Mod Syndicate. Now, what happened after the match is what's interesting. With this newfound power, Tom Merritt has elected to end the Mod Syndicate. Shortly after the free preview, Tom released an official press statement. Press release? That's what it is. A press release. Stating that the Mod Syndicate was no longer going to be a team. That he was going to use this victory as a springboard to something bigger and something better. So if that's a new faction, maybe the Mod Syndicate will reform. But I guess Monica and Ben are out seeking new employment at this point. Mods no more for the two of them. That does bring us to our main event from the free preview number 3. And that was our championship match between myself and Scott Johnson. Now, this match started with a surprise debut of Core Blue, a new faction that is basically the original faction. When Frog Wrestling started, Core consisted of myself, Bo Schwartz, and Dearest Martha. And shortly after that, Scott joined Core and kind of became the de facto leader, which made sense. He was the champion, had the belt, kind of put him in charge. Then he kicked everybody out. Core is back, the original Core, the Core before Scott. and they call themselves Core Blue. And along with that, John did secure a victory in the championship match. Now, let's talk about the championship match a little bit because it did not go the way we expected. And I'll go ahead and give a light recap for anybody that either has forgotten or didn't see it and is watching this for some reason. Basically, the first round of the match ended via a countout when John was trying to get back in the ring and got counted out at 10. Now, I felt, and I understand that people will say that I'm certainly not impartial with this decision, but if you go back and watch it, I think you'll see that there is logic behind this. That the AI got stuck on the steps, and that I was also clearly entering the ring when the 10 went off. Like, I was up through the ropes, maybe not all the way in the ring yet, but I felt that it was a disappointing way to end the match, especially when, by all accounts, I was basically still in the fight. So I had the match restarted. Possibly would have been a controversial decision, but in round 2 of the match, Scott got eliminated via countout after almost the exact same scenario. He was a little less in the ring, but still making his way to the ring when the 10 count hit it. And look, I don't want to be called a hypocrite. If I did it for myself, it only seems fair to do the same for Scott. So instead of declaring those false endings, what I decided in that moment to do was, all right, let's give Scott a victory for the first count out. Let's give John a victory for the second. And let's make this match a best 2 out of 3 match. And let's have one more start. This one for the gold, quite literally. If it's a count out, it goes to whoever, stays in the ring. And the match ended spectacularly. It ended with a glitch that made it slow motion for some reason. And it was a fantastic match. It was really, really good. And I think most people who see it, even though the outcome does favor myself, which I'm certainly not upset about, will say that that was the best way that could have gone. I think it was a very surprising and fair match, and a really, really good match overall. So that's where we're at. We have a new Frog Pants champion in myself, and a new era has begun as Core Blue has put a hurt on original Core, the Core crew, Scott and Brian Dunaway. They don't really have a name exactly. I just got past a note at the desk. This is not, try and put it on the camera here. This is a notebook. It's not a Fargo case, but let's see here. This is a statement from former champion Scott Johnson. I guess we'll just read it. He isn't here. Doesn't want to show his face publicly, but I guess I will read his statement. I guess I can't blame him for not wanting to be here. Okay, he says this. Free Preview 3 was an accident. It was a mistake. It was a slight fault in an otherwise perfect plan. And that's the best way to describe this new faction. John, Bo, and Martha, they called themselves Core, but they were never a team until I arrived to unify them. Now, behind my back, they've reformed and stolen the name and called themselves Core Blue. They have also stolen my title. That's the championship. They have the audacity to act like they have a right to either one of those things. I think it's time to take Core back to its Heroes of the Storm roots. I think it's time to go back to the days of red versus blue. If these pretenders want to be Core Blue, Then let me be the first to introduce their rivals, Core Red, who you will all be meeting very soon. Mistakes happen, and we exist to correct it. The championship, all of Frog Wrestling, will soon be back in the rightful hands. Oh, in our rightful hands again. It's the official statement from Scott. Now this might look vaguely like notes of matches, but I assure you it's a letter directly from Scott, and you can so clearly tell that that was written in Scott's voice too. So we just have to believe it's true. It sounds like Scott is not going down without a fight. It sounds like we might have another faction, Core Red, forming to fight. And, you know, not since the days of NWO, and NWO Red has color added behind a name really meant quite so much. But you know what? If Scott wants to form a different version of Core, that's fine. Everyone knows what the original was. Everybody knows that the original is the best. So put together your team, Scott. Show us what you have. Because I'll tell you what we have. I'll tell you what Core Blue has that Scott Johnson doesn't have. What Core Blue has is a championship belt. You're not going to find that at Core Red. Core Red is words on a piece of paper. It's a vague threat. It's nothing. We're not worried. Prove it in the ring. We'll see what happens. But that is going to bring us to the end of this Pawn News update. Again, covering what all went down at Free Preview 3. If you haven't watched it yet, go back and watch it. But just to set up a tease for this week, everything is going to be different. We've got at least one new faction, sounds like maybe two. We're going to see what the future is with this Core Blue and a new champion. We're going to see what Scott's plans are and whatever this Core Red is about. And I think we're going to have to see what the fallout of the mod syndicate, just falling apart, is going to be. What does the future look like for Monica, for Ben? What is going to happen with our tag team champions? It made perfect sense for Tanner and Ibbott to team up, but now they have to continue to function as a team. What does all of this look like in this new landscape? I've put in a lot of work. I won't lie. It's been kind of a ridiculous amount, honestly. So I thank you to everyone watching for taking this journey so far, and I can't wait to show you what's coming up this week. It should be a great start to things, but it's not just going to be this week. It's going to be going forward. We got lots of neat things that we're building towards, that we're building up, and I appreciate you all for being here. Till next time, thank you, everybody. Have a good night.